Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and one of my top 10 most anticipated films of 2019, Glass. And this is from Shyamalan himself, M. Night Shyamalan. And this is the follow-up to both Unbreakable and Split. And disappointed. And it makes me sad, because I know a lot of the reviews going into this film were not great. I was still hopeful going in. This film is not great. And it's not really good. It's kind of eh. And that's the most frustrating part, because, and taking a step back from just this film, M. Night Shyamalan had been on an upward curve of The Visit was a fun little thriller, and I really enjoyed it. And then Split came out, I'm like, see, this is getting back upwards to like Unbreakable and Sixth Sense and Signs, and I was getting excited. And I was really hopeful that Shyamalan would be able to finish this and really hit it home. And this film is not like a dumpster fire of The Happening and After Earth and Last Airbender and Lady in the Water. This is just a really overly ambitious film that doesn't really hit all of its marks and struggles because of budget, because I think this film was a little too ambitious for what it had to work with. And I think the most frustrating thing about this is how this film dealt with its three main characters, because you have these three very strong characters. David Dunn, who is somebody that is a everyman and a really good human being, and in the first film is struggling with his marriage, and he's not perfect. He's broken in some ways, his marriage and trying to connect with his son. And you see how that first film, he really comes into his own on accepting himself and really coming to grips with his life, his marriage, his family. And this film kind of wastes him. He's very much the focal point for like the first 20 minutes or so of this film, and that's where you're really enjoying it. And you get to see him interacting with his son, who, I want to double check, Spencer Treat Clark, who comes back, who played his son in the original Unbreakable, comes back, and you really enjoy their dynamic. And you're really setting up, and he comes head to head with the Horde. And James McAvoy is amazing in this film, just like he was in Split. He's an unbelievable actor, being able to balance all these different personalities, and this is off to a great start. And then you spend like an hour just in this asylum. And that's not necessarily a bad thing in itself. How it's handled is not great, because David Dunn just kind of disappears for a lot of this movie. And I've heard rumors that it's like they couldn't pay Bruce Willis enough to get him on set enough to make him more of a focal point of this film. And if that's the case, that's an unfortunate drawback of art versus business. But at least they probably could have made a bit more of an effort with making the most out of him, because come to the third act, the big ending, he is a part of it. And overall, I have to say, this ending of this film bothers me, because I don't feel like all three of these characters really get their arcs settled and feel like they got their fair shake. And that bothered me, because inherently the ending wouldn't necessarily bother me, but on some level it feels kind of unearned, because it kind of comes out of nowhere. And I'm not going to go into the ending. A lot of people hate the ending, outright hate it, and I can see that. And I wish that it would have worked a little better and was set up a little better and had more payoff. But you get the Horde, and the Horde's actually the main, out of the three characters, gets the most out of this film, and this film feels a lot more like a Split sequel. And I appreciate that, what they're able to do with the Horde, and this feels like a satisfying follow-up to Split, because it feels earned and the progression feels right, and then you get to Mr. Glass, Elijah, and basically Samuel L. Jackson doesn't really pop up and really get to do anything until like the last third of the movie, and it's kind of, it's unexpected, that's for sure. And for the third, I think if they balance a better job with David Dunn, it wouldn't have been as much of an issue. But when Glass shows up, he shows up. And Samuel L. Jackson is a great addition to this film in his smaller supporting role, because he really sells every line of dialogue. He sells his character and really what he's about. And I really appreciated that. And Bruce Willis actually does a really good job in this film. He shows up and he is there when he is there. And that's always a concern recently, that he sleepwalks through some of his roles. He is invested in this movie, and I really appreciated this. Some of the other supporting characters, like Elijah's mom being involved, makes a lot of sense. Some of her dialogue, though, is atrocious and awkward, but I don't blame that on the actress at all. It's just a lot of the dialogue across this movie is kind of bad, and that's not exactly Shyamalan's greatest strength. And it shows, and some of this is so heavy-handed, and them trying to explain comic book themes and stuff like that, I'm like, I think enough people at this point understand that I always hate like parts in films where it's really blah, 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 really hitting you over the head with exposition, and this film overdoes it a lot. Anya Taylor-Joy's character coming back for this film, I appreciated what they do with her a little bit. Probably not the most well-utilized aspect of this film. I think they could have done more interesting things with her, but she serves her purpose, and she has some strong moments. This film is full of strong moments, in terms of action. It's unorthodox action. There's nothing too crazy or fancy with what's going on in this film. I think the most impressive thing about the action in this film is how they shoot it on their budget. And I think that has a lot to do with Shyamalan as a director really doing a great job with how the action is staged and how they shoot different things. And the cinematographer, Mike Giolakis, does a great job of using his camera work to make some very intriguing and unexpected camera angles and shots in this film that I appreciated. And how this film is shot is great. And the use of color, and that color is very vibrant and stands out. And Sarah Paulson plays a significant role in this film, and I think she does a great job, and where her character goes is very interesting. There's quite a few big twists in this film, and most of them are good payoffs. One of them is really debatable, and a big thing is how they set things up in this film, and the idea of this being earned. And the biggest letdown of this film is the middle half of this film, because the pacing just dies and goes to this crawl, and it's really frustrating trying to sit through the middle of this movie, because it feels like it kind of loses its sense of purpose and energy, and until it gets a kickstart, once Mr. Glass really gets into things, then the ball gets rolling. How this film is really brought together, I think Shyamalan does a good job as a director with this film. I think the writing is where the weakness is, and something that's really impressive is Wes Dylan Thordson's fantastic score. I loved it. It worked a little bit with the Unbreakable score, it worked a little bit with the Split score, and really came together, and this is fantastic music in this film. I really, really liked it a lot. And overall, I think this movie is a bit of a mess, and is disappointing, and it has its shining moments, but overall, it doesn't really come together the way that you want it to. And, well, you see, I shouldn't say that. I'm not a big person of like, this didn't go how I wanted, so I don't like this movie. I want to be surprised. And I want this to go in directions that I'm not expecting. But I want it to work and be built up to and earned, so when it does happen, it really does hit. I feel like this movie takes some liberties with a lot of things, and there's some strong strengths and there's some strong weaknesses that really bring this movie down. And overall, I wouldn't go out and say this is really worth going out to see in theaters. I saw in Dolby, and the sound mixing really helped. Like, Dolby elevated this, and it felt intense when it was intense. But I don't think this is really a movie that I'm going to be like, you have to go out and see this in theaters. Maybe check this out when it's at home, especially. Don't really go see this if you haven't seen Unbreakable and Split. You should watch them first, because you're really not going to get a lot of stuff out of this movie and where things come together. But if this is a film that you're looking forward to, I wouldn't say go rush out to the theater to see it. But those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think. Comment and let me know your thoughts on the film. And thank you as always for supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.